Hello, and welcome to this very special presentation entitled Making Time Matter in Healthcare with Intelligent Automation. My name is Darren Atkins, and I am the Chief Technology Officer for Automation at East Suffolk and North Essex NHS Foundation Trust, a large acute NHS hospital in the east of England. In this session, I will share with you an overview of my automations, offer you some helpful advice to help you accelerate your automation program, and to learn from my own personal real-world experience. If you believe what you read in the media, robots are taking over the world. In fact, when I started this project 2 years ago, this was very much the case. Before thinking about technology, the most important factor to consider is organizational culture. This technology, especially in healthcare, is still very new, and so to some, it can seem very threatening, especially if the business strategy is to displace jobs and drive cost-cutting across the organization. In healthcare, this couldn't be further from the truth, especially with the recent pandemic where staff resources were stretched to the limit, and equally a concern as healthcare organizations push forward with their recovery plans. In our trust, we use the philosophy of making time matter. If we were able to use robots or digital workers to free up time for our clinicians to spend more time with our patients and for corporate staff to undertake more highly skilled tasks, this has to be a good thing. For this reason, the only way I am measuring automation success is through time saved. Time is a factor that everyone can understand. It is precious, we cannot get any more of it, and we must use it wisely. Of course, with automation we have seen significant secondary benefits, such as a reduction in unbudgeted agency staff, an improvement in clinic utilization, and a reduction in the DNA rate for outpatient clinic appointments. Some of these I will discuss in this session. So let's now focus on the technology. It is very important that you understand the capabilities of my robots, as this will help you think about the ways in which they will be able to help you in your business. Let's start with robotic process automation. What is it? In simple terms, it is sophisticated software that allows me to mimic what a human can do via a keyboard and a mouse into any application. As long as I don't need a physical pair of hands, anything is possible. The only limitations are that of your own imagination. There are so many vendors in the marketplace who offer RPA. At the very outset, I realized that if I invested in a pure RPA solution, then it wouldn't be very long until I had to buy yet more software to allow me to maximize the benefits of any automation. Our trust is committed to move into a cloud environment. I didn't want to spend money and use my own precious IT resources to build and deploy physical infrastructure and to provide operational support. This is when I discovered a company called Thoughtonomy, now Blue Prism Cloud. Blue Prism Cloud offers my robots so many more skills than basic RPA. As it is a cloud-based and vendor-supported, I know I will always have access to the latest tools, all for a fixed annual subscription rate. So what else can my bots do? In the NHS, we pride ourselves on having electronic patient records. What this really means is we have a massive library of scanned pieces of paper for which we cannot extract any data. This is where OCR comes in. OCR is optical character recognition. Blue Prism Cloud's OCR is intelligent. So rather than tell the robot where on the page to find the information by pixel position, we teach it how to find the information for itself. This OCR layer also applies to the processing of supplier invoices, which I will demo shortly. My robots also have access to a suite of AI or cognitive tools that further enhance their abilities. For example, my bots can translate between 60 different languages in real time, a feature I'm using to send patient letters in their native language. I can also take unstructured data and perform keyword classification and grouping of data types, analyze the text to read the sentiment. For example, if a job reference uses positive or negative language. I can analyze handwriting or look at a digital photo and tell the color of someone's eyes, whether they are smiling or the brand of clothes they are wearing. All these features I call RPA Plus, or Intelligent Automation, and offer me as a customer the ability to do some really incredible transformational processes. I also have the ability to collect structured data using eForms, which feed directly to a robot worker for prioritization, triaging and processing. Of course, you can still feed the robot from other data collection methods, for example, Microsoft Forms in Teams, which I use for our COVID antibody testing. I also have chatbot technology, which I hope to use as part of a patient portal in the future. The wonderful thing here is that my bots are not department or division specific. They can run any process for any part of our business and can prioritize workload by adhering to business rules set using the platform's orchestration layer. Well, that's enough about technology. You now understand what my bots are capable of. Let's see what they have actually done. So the first process I did was invoice processing. With the merger of Colchester and Ipswich hospitals together to form ESNEFT, this was a great opportunity to bring the invoice processing in-house. So traditionally what would happen is a paper invoice would arrive, a member of the team would stick on a barcode, scan it on a photocopier, and then take that PDF output and input it into our accounts payable system called Integra. What happens now is the robot worker will monitor an email account just as much as a human would do, and it will check every single email that comes through that box. We've trained it to read an invoice, whether it's a single page invoice or a multi-page invoice, it doesn't matter. Whether it's a credit note, an invite to a golf day, it really doesn't care. And what it does for the emails that it needs to process, it takes the attachments, i.e. the invoice, and it passes it through the OCR engine. The OCR engine intelligently reads the data from the page, things like the invoice number, the supplier name, the VAT registration number, the VAT rate, the total of the invoice, and many other articles that we need to do the process. And it sets itself a 95% accuracy threshold. So if it is less than 95% happy that it has all the right data, it will pass it to a human for verification. Now once the human has verified any element of that invoice that the robot isn't sure about, the robot will learn from it and it won't ask again. What it then does is it takes that key information and it logs into our Integra system in exactly the same way as a human does. So let me show you how this works. So here is a recording of the demo for the invoice processing. Just going to start it for you now. The first point to note is the robot logs into the application exactly the same way as a human does. In fact, it has its own identity. We don't hide our robots from our member of staff, we just make them appear like part of the team. So we're very transparent and open. And what the robot does now, it replicates the exact steps that the human does. The important point here though is the robot gets it right every single time. It enters correct information, it verifies the data as it enters it, and it doesn't make any mistake. It also tends to perform faster. Now everybody says that robots are fast, and in fact they're only as fast as the application into which you are automating. So if you're using an application that's slow, your robots won't be any faster. But as I say, we have seen about a 60% speed increase across all of our processes. The great thing here though is this work is not being done at the user's desktop, it's happening behind the scenes. So whereas this process may take a robot 3 minutes to do, that's 3 minutes that the user's desktop is not being tied up, so it really does free up their time to do something else. To give you an example, on a really busy day we had 923 invoices, which the finance team believes saved them around 77 hours worth of time. But what's really important is we now have an engine of invoice intelligence that can be shared across the NHS. We all use the same sort of suppliers, so we may as well share that information for other people to benefit by. So that first process, it was our first process, took us about 3.5 months to do, and we did that in partnership with Blue Prism Cloud, who taught us how to develop our own robots and how to develop the code intelligently. Now what's really interesting, I'll say it now, is the marketplace is full of so much hype. It tells you that robots are really easy to do. Build them in a day, build them in a few hours. I can tell you now that's complete rubbish. To build processes that are resilient, secure, and work intelligently with a really low exception rate takes a little bit of thought. Building a robot badly is very easy. To do it well enough to be able to support clinical pathways and deal with patients takes a little bit more thought. Anyone can learn it. Anyone who can do a crossword puzzle or a Sudoku puzzle would be great at doing robotic process automation. But what you have to be careful is you don't create yourself a Frankenstein's monster that then comes out of control, and it needs a lot of resource to manage that for you. So having done something for finance, our finance team were really pleased. I guess I wanted to do something that we could focus on the clinical side, seeing if we could use our robots to bring some benefits to our patients. So our first clinical process was the processing of GP referrals into our EPR. If I give you a real world example, so our colleagues in our neurology department would take around 20 minutes to process just one referral. That's 20 minutes of time wasted printing out pieces of paper, scanning paper, merging data together, and then keying it into an electronic system. through our own admission, this is time what we couldn't spend talking to our patients on the telephone. That's really important. So what happens now is a robot, instead of taking 20 minutes, will take 6 minutes worth of time to process that. But what happens? Let me walk you through the process. The first thing that happens is the robot will monitor a screen of a clinical system in real time. So the moment that GP referral arrives, the robot worker will realize that and use it as a trigger to trigger some action. The robot worker will open up that referral. It will download all of the attachments, all the clinical information, and for neurology there could be maybe 25 or 30 different attachments. It will download those files, it will verify them, it will turn them around the right way, and it will merge them together in a single PDF. What then happens is it logs into our Kainos Evolve EPR and it uploads all that information and keys in about 2 or 3 screens worth of data in order to present it to our clinician for triage or grading, basically to move the patient onto the next stage of the pathway. One of the challenges here is a lot of the NHS systems that we use are protected with a physical plastic smart card. Now you remember at the start of the presentation I said to you our robots didn't have any hands, so this presented a particular challenge. What I was able to do in partnership with a company called IsoSec is develop something called the virtual smart card. So our robots no longer need a physical smart card to log into NHS systems, which has been a game changer. It now means we can do a lot more automating of clinical based processes. In terms of the benefits here, well, we saw a bit of cash saving in terms of agency staff, unbudgeted staff that were being brought in to help with the processing of referrals. We've definitely seen a quicker turnaround in terms of patient care and patient flow. But more importantly, our hard-working secretaries, medical secretaries, are able to spend time on the telephone talking to concerned patients. And remember at the very beginning, I said this is about making time matter. If we can enable our medical staff to spend more time with our patients, that has to be a really good thing, and that's our number one goal. So what I'm going to do now is show you just a very brief video. It's a little bit old now, I have to say. It was recorded just a few weeks after we went live about 18 months ago, so things have changed slightly. But it will give you a really good insight into what our customers, our clinicians, our IT staff think about the technology and how it's really helping them in their workplace.
East Suffolk and North Essex NHS Foundation Trust is pioneering digital transformation with the introduction of Thoughtonomy's virtual workers into its team. By automating the first stage in the GP referrals process, it is driving a better patient experience and a better working experience for its staff.
I'm Darren Atkins, I'm the Deputy Director of ICT here at Ipswich Hospital. Here at the Trust we have a philosophy of making time matter. So I was really interested to look at automation as a way of releasing time so that staff have more time in their day to do the more highly skilled work, to spend more time with patients and making time matter.
I'm Chris Harvey and I work in the Ipswich Hospital Neurology Department as one of the medical secretaries. Before the virtual worker, we used to take out a lot of the documentation from one piece of software that then had to be uploaded into another piece of software. So that was quite time consuming, and obviously there was a risk of error for making sure that you got the paperwork out of one piece of software into the correct patient's documents on our patient note system.
So what we were looking at here at the Trust is a flexible platform which we could use internally to build automation processes. We were keen to adopt technology that would offer flexibility but also provide a range of tools that would allow us to maximise the benefit that any automation can bring. The use of virtual worker technology has allowed us to engage with frontline staff in a positive way by making time matter and effectively creating a culture of virtual buddies. So we use robot technology to help staff maximise their time in the workplace.
My name's Izzy George and I work in the automation team at ESNEF. A big IT change can be quite daunting to a lot of people, but having people in the team that have clinical experience and experience with patients has made that transition a lot smoother. The great thing about these virtual workers is that you don't have to be tied down to a desk. I can actually monitor the queues, monitor the productivity from my smartphone.
My name is Zoe Knipes and I work for the Neurology Department. It was a bit difficult to start with because you're always not sure whether it's going to work or not, but then sometimes you just have to embrace it and hope for the best.
And it's worked out?
It has definitely worked out, yeah, definitely, very positive.
My name is Peter Pokorny. I work as a staff grade neurologist at Ipswich Hospital. I personally think that the most impact on patient is because the secretaries have more time, they can sort out more phone calls, do more clinical practice, and I think I have already felt some impact.
So I'm delighted with what my team have delivered around the automation programme. We deliver real benefit to frontline staff very quickly, and also the ongoing benefits have been significant, more than we ever imagined it to be. So I hope you enjoyed that video. Just to say, the GP referral process took about 6.5 weeks from start to finish. So you can see we're already getting faster with delivering some of these processes. And the reason we're able to do that is because a lot of the code that we write, the objects and the processes, can be repurposed and used for other workflows. And I think that's really important. We're not creating bespoke code for every single application of robotic process automation. So as time's gone on over the last couple of years, we've built a really expansive library covering most clinical applications that are used within England, but also a lot of the core Microsoft type technologies. So we're able to produce these processes faster and faster each time. And a little bit later on in the presentation, I'll share with you a story about how we created some national processes in less than 24 hours. So just an example of another process we did is around patient appointment reminders. And the reason I show you this one is because it shows you that actually if you talk to the people who are actually doing the work, those people, as I call it, at the coalface, doing the actual processing, you'll come up with some really fantastic ideas. So do not limit yourself to talking just to team leaders and managers and directors. Speak to the people who do the work. And this is a great example at hand. So let me just briefly explain what happens here. If you have an appointment at the hospital, you'll receive a text message on your mobile phone, probably about 3 or 4 days beforehand, and it will ask you whether you're coming into that appointment. Now, if you're feeling better and you feel you don't need to come and see the clinician, you can just cancel that appointment. What would happen is that message would come back to our contact center, and some of the time the appointment wouldn't be cancelled. That means on the day of the clinic, you've told us you're not coming into the hospital, but unfortunately nobody else knows. That means we've got a clinician, a couple of nurses in an expensive clinic facility waiting for you to arrive. But worse than that, 3 or 4 days later, you will receive a letter from the hospital saying that you missed your appointment. And that letter costs around about £1 for us to send. So you can see it's really inefficient. And at a time when the NHS is struggling to get capacity, it was really important that we try and use our robots to resolve this issue. What happens now is the robot worker will take that text message, it will log into our patient administration system, and it will cancel that appointment. But it goes one step further. It notifies the outpatient lead or the outpatient manager to repurpose that slot. In the near future, the robot will book that for another patient. We're not quite there yet. But the results for this have been huge. What we found is in the first 12 months, we have been able to realize 13,000 slots that would have been wasted just by patients not arriving. But effectively, that will allow us to save. It's not a cost saving, it will stop us wasting around £2.1 million a year, using the figure that we send out to a patient of £160 per slot. Now, when I tell you that this process was created in just 3.5 weeks from idea through to delivery, you can just really see the value of automation and how very quickly, if you choose the right processes, you can get a massive return on investment. And these are the results from just one hospital in England. Just imagine if every trust in the country had the same process and tackled their cancellations in the same way, how much extra capacity we would get within the hospital system to support our patients. Let's have a look at some of the results. In the last 24 months, we have released 76,000 hours worth of time back to our hardworking NHS staff. That's time we would never have had we not used robot technology. That equates to just over 2,000 weeks. That's a lot of capacity we've freed up. We've saved money, but remember, money's not our main driver, but we have. We've seen a reduction in our DNA rate through our outpatient clinics. I think it went down from something like 7.1 to 5.2, so it's quite a significant drop. We've seen better data quality. Robots do not make mistakes, especially if you program them correctly, but you can also train them to fix some of these issues. I'd like to think we've given better patient experience. We've seen some of that, but more importantly, our own staff are happy because we've used this technology in a very supportive way, and we've made it all about the time matter philosophy. Everybody understands it. We're a very approachable team. Anyone can come up with an idea, we will look at it, and we will deploy it if it makes sense to do that. So, bearing in mind we started the first month with 300 hours, and last month we did about 11,500 hours, you can really see that curve in terms of driving through the time savings. It's absolutely phenomenal. So let me give you some example of some of the other processes that we've done, just really to give you some ideas of how you can apply this technology. So in cardiorespiratory, here we've taken unstructured data, we've applied some very simple learning, and we're able to automatically book those diagnostic tests for the patient. What has that done? That saved us around 85 hours worth of time back to the staff who work in that specialty. But the challenge here, and this is always a challenge within the NHS system, is how do you release that as cash? Well, you can't. This work was being done for free. In fact, we find that everywhere. Very rarely do people in the NHS work their 8-hour shift. They always come in early, they stay late because they care for their patients. So in this instance, we can't save money, but what we have done is improve the quality of our order requests. But more importantly, we've given our staff a better work-life balance, and that's really important. We've also done some work around our urgent treatment centre, and that's taking patient referrals from a GP system into the hospital acute system. The challenge here is we had just 4 weeks to create 4 processes that would register a patient in less than a minute, the time it took them to walk through a set of glass doors. It was a real struggle, lots of late nights and weekends, but we did that. And I think that shows you the power of automation. You can be doing things quickly that have quite a dramatic impact on the way the hospital works. We've also done a lot of work around ESR. ESR is an HR type system. I think traditionally a lot of say consultancy companies will tell you to use automation for high volume repetitive processes. I don't buy that. It's a very easy equation for me. How much time do I need to spend to release the time in terms of benefit? So this was a one-off process, and it was to do with merging staff positions with the merger of both hospitals, and there we would have prevented us hiring in the staff to do about 1,600 hours worth of work. Very much worth doing. We've done more work around ERS. So you remember I was talking, ERS is the system we use to receive GP referrals. So for those of you listening in the NHS, we've done work around accept referrals, and we're also looking to do some automation of advice and guidance, which is quite exciting. But we've also used automation to do some of the work that the IT teams don't have time to do. So most people now, especially with the pandemic, are moving towards a Microsoft Teams environment. With Teams, it's really important that your contact information is up to date. And we have an internal intranet with a staff directory, but sadly the information that our staff would put in the directory wouldn't go anywhere other than the intranet. So what the robot workers are now doing is updating Active Directory as well. So it makes sure that everything is up to date and that flows down to other downstream systems. We've also done a lot of work around HR recruitment with things like Track and NHS Jobs. So moving staff applications from long listing to shortlisting, downloading applications, emailing the member of or the applicant who's applying for the job to say that their application has been received, emailing the recruitment manager and telling them they need to do shortlisting. And actually prior to COVID, I had about 16 different HR processes I was working on, and we'll continue that work again now. But imagine having an engine that will read references and work out if they're good or bad ones. Imagine having a bot that will take the standard job description, look at the CVs and the applications, and then rank them based on suitability. All these things are going to save so much time and provide decision support. And that's an interesting point. Whether we'll get to a world where the robots will make those decisions, I don't know. But in terms of providing clinical decision support and back office support, then we can certainly do that. A couple other quick things that we've done. We've also done some work around our cancer MDTs. So as we know, dealing with cancer patients is a higher priority, and we use a lot of admin resource to take the output from the clinical review meetings in order to type that into our cancer systems and email the GPs. It hasn't quite gone live yet. It should go live in the next couple of weeks, but we're going to get a robot to do that. We've also done a lot of work around patient portals. Now, Patient Portal is an external portal where patients can access their letters, book appointments, and read other sorts of information about their care. And one of the things I always say is patient portals, I call them patient potholes, because they rely on a lot of human input behind the scenes. So where we can use automation is to bridge that gap. We can put together or allow disparate systems to talk to one another using RPA and some of the intelligent tools we have. So in this situation, we have a patient portal where an expectant mum can fill in a self-referral form. That information can go to a robot who can register the patient, book the appointment, and send the appointment details back in that patient's native language. That was a process that probably would have taken days beforehand, and it could be done within just 3 to 5 minutes. A couple other quick things around COVID, and we'll go more about COVID in a moment. COVID was a really strange situation because we had a lot of opportunity to do automation, but the traditional automation route of taking a few weeks, a month or so to develop a really complex process just wasn't possible. So I had to work really fast. And there were two key processes that I delivered within 24 hours. And yes, it meant I had to stay up all night to get them done, but we managed to do it. And these are automations that ended up bringing benefit to the whole national approach or national support of COVID. So the first one, the care homes in the country and social care did not have access to NHS Mail. So what I was able to do is write some robot technology that would take application forms from care homes and effectively extract triage information and create those accounts for the care homes. This figure's slightly out of date now, but we were able to issue NHS Mail accounts to nearly 7,000 care homes. And I was speaking to a nurse who was doing a ward round just recently, and they said how beneficial it was to be able to communicate directly with the care home about a patient who was about to be discharged or who was in hospital for treatment. So linking up that wider integrated care system just by using a robot to do mail accounts was really good. Equally, I'm sure all of you struggled to get some shopping and get some groceries. The supermarket Iceland in the UK were kindly offered over 1 million delivery slots to care homes, and it was my robot worker that would take those vouchers and issue them to the care homes. They all had to be unique, and only a certain number had to go to particular care homes, and the robot did all that for us. And that was really good. And again, that was done in about 24 hours. We've also done some other COVID work, which I won't go into now, but I want to share with you probably our biggest success. So with COVID, we used robots to help us manage our antibody testing. In this scenario, we had a very short amount of time to process a large volume of antibody testing requests for our staff. It effectively went through three phases. We had to work out how to get input from the patient to collect their key information in order to process that request. We had to submit the request to our pathology labs, and then when the results were ready, we had to send those back to the patients. So let's have a look at how we did this. And this is where we brought in some other Microsoft technology to help us. So firstly, in order to receive the self-referral from a member of staff, we use Microsoft Forms. So again, a relatively simple form where the patient would enter key information and the output would get sent to a robot worker. What the robot worker would then do is trigger a booking request. So the member of staff was able to book a date and time for their appointment to turn up and have the blood taken and do the test. But also the robot would log on to our pathology system and create the patient if they weren't already a patient on the system. And if they were, it would book the order request. And this is the part that saved thousands and thousands of hours of time. Let me just show you a quick demo of this. So I'm going to play a video for you now. On the right hand side you can see the robot code, and on the left hand side you can see the worker doing the work. So effectively it's searching for the patient and it's booking the request. And it's actually quite fast. This is slowed down to about half the speed, just so you can actually see it working, but it does run really quickly. So what it does, it enters the data accurately, it assigns it to our pathology labs, so it's ready to receive for the patient to do the test and receive the result. I think in the first day of running we did well over 1,000 tests, and about 2 weeks later I think we're at about 12 or 13,000 tests. And in fact this process has been so successful, our neighbours at Norfolk and Norwich NHS Trust asked for my help to do the same, so I rolled out the code to them. Interestingly enough though, their process was very different, but because myself and my team had developed our processes in a very standard and modular way, it was relatively easy to retrain the robots for part of their process to enable them to do the same work. And interestingly enough, this is a process that would apply again to every trust in the country. Sadly, not all trusts have got automation platforms right now. Others are still working on pieces of paper and spending many hours processing these requests. And equally, some of them have a few thousand in backlog. So it's a real time waster using humans just to key information in from one page to another. But we've been able to use robots for that, so that's been really good. I just want to show you a couple other quick demos as well of how automation can be applied. Now traditionally through automation you use the front end application in order to manipulate the robot to do whatever it is that you need to do, and that's great, but also for some applications there's another way. And here's an example of a demonstration I put together for a company called Image and their product called MediViewer. And in MediViewer, instead of using the front end application, I used their API. So let me just run through this demo very quickly. So here's a demo that I built, which takes referral information or patient information and uploads it via an API, a POST API, into MediViewer. So I'm just going to talk you through what this does here. So this is MediViewer. What I'm going to do is have a look at a patient. So we click on recent patients and we look at a patient here called Max, and he hasn't got any patient information or any records uploaded at the moment, so it's ideal for our demo here. So what I can do is take a feed from any system, so be it referrals from ERS or any other system is fine. So here you've got a queue, you can see a list of items that have already been processed. That on the item key is the NHS number, and here is the Blue Prism Cloud application. So I'm going to run it at half the speed so you can see what's going on, otherwise it'll be way too fast. And just for the sake of the demo, what we're going to do is load some information into the queue. So that's been done, and it's going to get our first item. What it does, it sends that information to MediViewer using the hospital number and the NHS number and the file path and file name, and it sends it through. So that's been done already. I'm going to send a second one. Here we go. Sends it through, and you'll see the batch ID come back from the API. It's done. It's been sent. So that will just circle around now until it's finished. I think there's 10 in the queue right now. If we take a look at the queue, there you go. You can see 2 have been done already. One's in progress, and there's some more still to be done. Now this process has been designed that it can run on multi-bot. So if you've already got a high volume of transactions here, then you can apply more robots to it. Also running at full speed, it seems to do an upload in about a second for a relatively small file. Obviously larger files will take a bit longer. So I've just sped it up there. It's now running at full speed, but when you're running this for real, you run it through something called a control room, so none of this activity happens on the screen, so again it'll be a lot faster. It's also running on a laptop that's acting as a server as well as a client, so it's going to be a little bit slower. So let's have a look at the queue. You can see some more items have been done, a few more still to be done, and it's finished, so job done. So if we go into MediViewer now and have a look here, search for the patient again, just refresh, you can see that 2 items have already been processed by the MediViewer server at the back end. Another 8 to be done, but you can flick through, you can see all the information's there, which is great. So this eliminates the need to use the client front end to upload information. It's also a lot faster. It can do very high volumes very quickly, and it's actually the first time I've seen this on the Blue Prism Cloud platform for clinical information. So if any customers got Blue Prism Cloud or they use MediViewer and they want to take sources of data from anywhere, then you can do it using this method. It's very quick and works really, really well. So let's go back to look at the patient again, just seeing if I can remember how to use this. Let's just double check the queue. You can see it's all been done, and it's got the status uploaded. If there is an issue, it can be flagged there. We could do any sort of corrective action, email the medical secretary or an administrator saying there's been an issue. And obviously there's loads more steps we could build into this process, as I do already with the GP referral work. Let's just double check, get the right patient this time. Still 2. Just refresh. There we go, got our 3rd one. So there, you can see it works.
Using some of the more intelligent tools, I've been able to do language translation. So in this demonstration, I'd like to show you how I can take a patient letter written in English and translate it into another language. All of this translation, I don't need to teach the robot how to do it. It uses the built-in learning within the tool set that I have, and it works really, really well. So on the left-hand side, you can see the robot code here. I'm just going to run this for you, and it's very simple to see what happens. So on the left-hand side, you've got the process. Just going to run that for you now. What we're going to do is open up a patient letter or patient document. This is a dummy one, by the way. And you can see just about that it's written in English there. What the robot's going to do is translate that into Japanese. So it's going to read the information from the blocks of text further down the page, and it translates them into Japanese. Now this has been slowed down dramatically for you to be able to see how it works. In real time, this translation is done with under a second. Hugely powerful. And I think maybe some of the reasons why patients don't arrive at their clinics on time, or they don't arrive prepared, is we just assume they understand English and they can read that. That's not always the case. So that's really powerful. So by creating a centre of excellence, I've been able to put together a very small team of talented people that have allowed me to deliver some huge benefits to the NHS. And in fact, when I started this 2 years ago, I had a big conundrum or a big thought about what's the best way of doing this. Do I employ software developers or RPA experts and then teach them about health? Or do I take people who understand the NHS and health and teach them how to do automation? And in fact, I believe, and I've studied this through many organizations throughout the world who I support and coach, that actually taking people from within the organization who understand your business, who understand your processes and have a good network of contacts, it's better to teach them how to develop intelligent automation solutions than rather hire people into your organization without a doubt. And in fact, you don't need to create a massive centre of excellence from day one. Just start with 1 or 2 people and let it grow. And in fact, 2 years down the line, I'm still a team of 4. We haven't grown. And I think one of the reasons we haven't grown is because the processes that we develop self-manage. They have a very, very low exception rate, less than 1% across all of our processes. And because we've got better at producing processes faster and faster and faster, in some respects we've gained extra capacity by just working in a much smarter way. But absolutely, definitely create your own centre of excellence. By all means, get support from partners in the early days, but that is absolutely the right way of doing it. At Microsoft Future Decoded last year, I announced the creation of something I call the NHS Digital Exchange. It's wholly owned by the NHS. All of the information in it is owned by the NHS, but it's hosted on a platform by Blue Prism Cloud. And what the NHS Digital Exchange does, it allows me to share all of my work with anybody I wish to share it with. So it's about the NHS sharing with other NHS organisations to accelerate the deployment of automation in a very cost-effective way. So in the DX, there are a lot of pre-written processes. Now, I would never say you should download a process and just start running it. Without a doubt, you need to do your own sanity checks, make sure it matches exactly the way you're working, and change it if you need to. But equally, there's a whole host of objects, and an object teaches a robot how to use an application that you can just use within your own processes. It's really good. And there are now probably 30 plus organizations sharing. Some really popular names like Great Western, Royal Marsden, Royal Free, Moorfields, Cambridge, Birmingham, Liverpool Women's and Children's, and the list goes on. And it's really, really exciting. So even though I know I've chosen the right technology, there are other technologies out there, of course, the real power here is through that collaboration. So some trusts have taken my work either in whole or in part and are using them. And there's a network of people you can reach out to, talk about challenges, talk about problems, get help and advice. So whatever industry sector you sit within, think about how you build that support network, because it is so powerful and really, really useful.
Due to budget cuts, skill shortages and social changes, there are mounting pressures for NHS leaders to adapt to unprecedented challenges. NHS organisations nationwide are deploying Blue Prism Cloud's AI cloud-based digital workforce to automate time-intensive complex tasks. From admissions and GP referrals through to outpatient support and shared back-office functions, these innovative automations help your team spend more vital hours delivering optimal patient care. Secure benefits faster using the NHS Digital Exchange. The NHS Digital Exchange is a central pool of tried and tested automations that allows NHS organisations to share knowledge, deploy and scale a digital workforce fast. Tapping into collective innovation from NHS leaders across the country will drastically reduce the time your team spend on office-based tasks and increase the time spent on improving patient experience. The NHS Digital Exchange allows other NHS organisations across the country to deploy your automations. You will be able to spread the benefits of your ideas beyond your organisation and into the wider NHS. With access to the Digital Exchange, you can log in, download new automations, adapt to your organisation, implement digital workers and improve your return on investment. One NHS trust has saved more than 10,000 hours of staff time in 1 month alone, whilst other trusts across the country have implemented automations that save hundreds of thousands of pounds per year, prevented more than 1,300 appointments being missed in an 8-week window, and set up new team members at record rates. Through the NHS Digital Exchange, Blue Prism Cloud is proud to foster closer collaboration between healthcare organisations and scale return on investment across the NHS. Join our community of automation pioneers and accelerate the benefits of intelligent automation, delivering more time to care across the NHS.
Just to give you some flavour of how RPA can be applied, I know this is health specific and some of you listening may not be from the health background, but it will allow you to think about automation in different pockets of functions. Let me run through these very briefly. So I already mentioned about maternity self-referrals. That's having the ability to interact with a patient externally through a patient portal, receive a self-referral form, and then have the robot worker register the patient, book the appointment and send that back again. So we can use this technology to engage with external patients or external customers in any way, shape or form, be that a voice message, a text message, a Word document, an email, an online form, a web browser, whatever it might be. We can use the robots to do that, and it's hugely powerful. So in terms of the healthcare system, why do we bring elderly people into the hospital to do a pre-assessment form for surgery when they're only told that they're not fit and well enough to have that surgery? Why can't they do that from home? And there's lots of other examples there. Equally in health, there's a lot of potential opportunity for improvement through outpatients. So just to give you an example, at our trust we have a self-service check-in terminal where you turn up to the appointment, check in, take a seat, you get called to see the clinician, and then you're handed a piece of paper to queue up to get an appointment on the way out. That's not automation. But the reason it's that way is because systems don't talk to one another. There's no API joining our paths to our self-service check-in screens. But what I can now do for the first time is use RPA to bridge the gap, to allow those systems to talk to each other. The great thing is I don't need to tell the vendors, I don't need to pay for any extra special licenses, and this is exactly what we're doing here. So anywhere where you have members of staff keying information from one screen to another, even if it involves changing that data, analysing that data and making a decision, that is a prime opportunity for automation. We're also doing some work around clinical coding, and the reason I mention this one is because this is a situation where we're going to build an AI engine that will take unstructured data, apply some clinical learning, and then gives the output of the clinical coding that we need to receive the revenue into the hospital. And the great thing there is this is something that's common across all hospitals. So if we can do that, and the first two areas I'm looking at is ophthalmology and endoscopy, then it becomes free to the NHS. So again, great opportunity. One thing that all organisations have in common are HR processes. And again, these are prime areas for automation. So starters and levers, the processing of recruitment, doing payroll transactions, managing appraisals, mandatory training, all these things. Imagine a world where you can fill in a new starter form and the robot worker will pick that up, create the Active Directory login, give you allocation to group shares, issue training, send emails. Amazing. But when you extrapolate that further and think about that locum doctor who turns up to a busy A&E or ED department on a Saturday morning who can't access systems and has to get someone out of bed in IT to do it for them, this is where the real potential comes in. And I guarantee that every organisation in the world has an HR department or a workforce department or a people department, whatever it's called these days, and they all have the same challenges. And RPA is prime area for this. We also talk about using robots to share information or working beyond and outside your own organisation. And this is where the Blue Prism Cloud platform has been really powerful. So for example, looking at ways of automating the handover from the ambulance for the patient who arrives in the ambulance into our ED department. Can we automate that handover and save 15 minutes worth of time? Well, it might only be 15 minutes, but it's 15 minutes per ambulance, and that's time when that ambulance could be out on the road serving patients who need them. That's got to be really positive. I've also been doing some work for a GP surgery to look at how we can use robots to look at patients got thyroid conditions, look at their pathology results, and then make a recommendation on what their prescription changes should be, as well as texting the patient. So with Blue Prism Cloud platform being cloud, it allows me to reach out to any other organisation in order to do some of their automation work. And that was very true with the COVID work I did recently for NHSX and NHS Digital. You can reach beyond your own boundaries and allow your robot workers to do anything anywhere, which is great. We've also spoken about patient engagement already. In terms of patient engagement, You can engage in many different ways in terms of, say, email, Word documents, text messages, voice. It's unlimited, so it's really very good. We talk about clinical audit, and we can go beyond clinical audit, but anywhere where you're taking data from one source to another and manipulating it is a great opportunity for automation. So in terms of clinical audit, we waste a lot of clinical time taking data from existing clinical sources, reformatting it, and then sending it somewhere else. But you could even relate that to your monthly HR processing, or your financial accounts, or your sickness reports. All these things just pull data from existing sources and reproduce it in a different way. We also look at things called, around service desks. If we can automate the top 10 calls through our service desk, we should be able to free up about 30% of our time. And remember, we don't just have an IT service desk, we have an estates one, an HR one, a finance one. So the robot can help address some of those queries and send data back to customers or staff members without draining too many resources. So you can really see that automation covers so many aspects of your business. I could talk for hours about all the different possibilities here, but really, if you can dream it, you can automate it. You absolutely can. So if you're interested in finding out more about my work, I have an online blog called somethingincredible.co.uk. On there you'll find videos, suggestions, ideas, templates, and also just some general advice on how to approach your intelligent automation journey. And finally, I'm available to anyone if you want to chat about this further. You can reach me on LinkedIn, on Twitter, via email, and I'd be more than happy to share my views and offer you some help and advice. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Thank you.